I love the music. I'm Mark Golub, and as the final tally of the 2015 Israeli elections have been calculated, confirming a strong, if somewhat unexpected win for Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party, which winds up with 30 seats in the next Israeli parliament, the Knesset. There are now a number of questions and issues clouding the election results, not the least of which deals with the statements Mr. Netanyahu made in the closing moments of the election, in which he seemed to do an about-face on his commitment to a two-state solution, also seemed to commit to settlement construction, so that the liberal Jewish community in Israel and in the United States are now hammering the prime minister. And the Obama administration is making noises that it might now support a UN resolution calling for a two-state solution based on 67 borders and land swaps. Well, how is this all playing out in Israel? And really, that's where the focus of our attention should be. What are Israelis thinking and saying in the aftermath of the March 17th elections? Well, to give us some answers, I'm pleased to have on our phones now from Jerusalem, Raoul Wootliff, political correspondent for The Voice of Israel in Jerusalem. And Raoul reports from the Knesset and is intimately involved with the Israeli political scene. Raoul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be with you.
Okay, Raoul, what's the general mood in your sense? What's the general mood in Israel in the aftermath of the elections?
Well, throughout this whole campaign, the Likud, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Zionist Union, led by Isaac Herzog, were running very close at the top of the race. And only in the last week, we saw the Zionist Union pull ahead a little bit, and that lead was obviously completely smashed by Benjamin Netanyahu's final result. And throughout the whole campaign, people were talking about whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu will be able to form a coalition, or whether or not maybe he'll need to form a unity government with Isaac Herzog, and in that last week, perhaps whether Isaac Herzog will be able to form his own coalition. Those questions have been put to the side by this win. It's obvious that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to form a coalition, even though the process still may take a while, and he'll have to sit with the president, with the other parties, and there will be some quite hard negotiations. But at the moment, the result has really put aside those questions, and the questions that took place during the elections have been quashed by this very strong result.
I understand, but I'm really looking for the mood. You know, if I were on the streets of Israel, is this already forgotten? Are people thrilled with the results? Do they have buyer's remorse? Are some people worried that Netanyahu, after all the strum and drum, is going to be prime minister again? Raoul, what's the mood on the street?
Well, the campaign messages of both the Zionist Union and the Likud were, it's us or them. And it became, throughout the campaign, there was a real, very strong anti-Netanyahu feeling amongst many of the parties, with the idea really being anyone but Bibi. That was the slogan that they used. And that, in the end, at the end of the campaign, it seems that didn't serve them well, because people did really feel, as they saw the Zionist Union pushing ahead, that we need to support Bibi. We need to go back to those traditional voting camps in Israel of right and left. And now, following the election, we're seeing that reaction from both sides. Those on the right, or those that supported Bibi, are understandably happy, and on the other side, we're seeing a reaction from the left that is perhaps worried by the result, or disappointed by the result.
Yes.
But those last few weeks of the campaign really did signify a difference between two sides in the camps, and we're seeing that now. The question is, afterwards, whether those two camps can be united in some way, if not politically, in society, obviously. Mm-hmm.
Raoul, many American Jews, even those who are sympathetic to and supportive of Mr. Netanyahu, seem concerned at best, upset at worst, by his apparent turnaround, first on the two-state solution, and his promise to continue settlement growth. And by the way, he referred to the Arab-Israeli vote in a way that some people are suggesting may have had a racist tinge to it. So let's take them one at a time. How do you feel Israelis have reacted to Mr. Netanyahu's statement that there will now be no two-state solution? He's not about to sit with Mahmoud Abbas. How do Israelis feel about that, Raoul?
Well, there's an unfortunate reality in Israel, which was expressed very well by Tzipi Livni in the last election when she joined the Netanyahu government, when she said that things that are said during election campaigns are just things that have been said. So we now have the election results, and it's a blank slate, and things can start again, which is unfortunate because, of course, we expect our politicians to follow through on their promises. But really with the Likud, we didn't see any party platform. The Likud hasn't released a party platform since 2009, and many of those key positions are unclear where they stand. Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu did say in 2009 that he supported a demilitarized Palestinian state, but throughout the campaign there have been mixed messages. At one point, one of his deputy ministers said that he did not support it, and the Likud released a statement saying that, and then he rejected that. And just days before just the day before the election, he did say that he rejected that. But we will have to see what that really means. As I said, it's these are statements that have been made during the campaign, and unfortunately, we can't always rely on them to be followed through in terms of policy.
Okay, but are you telling me Israelis don't care that the Prime Minister seems to have done an about-face on the two-state solution? They just don't care about it?
Well, the two-state solution is something that didn't really come up so much in this election. While the Zionist Union presented a different perspective, they never used the word peace. That issue was put to the side, really. One of the issues that came up in this election more than it has in previous elections is social issues, socioeconomic issues in Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu pushed the Iranian issue, but the issue of a two-state solution was really a side issue in this election. So, of course, Israelis, I'm not suggesting that Israelis don't care about the issue, but it wasn't a focal point of this election, and I'm not sure that it really had a huge effect on the final result. We saw in the last week a panic from the Likud and a real turnaround in their campaign. Netanyahu interviewed on Israeli press more in the last week of this campaign than he has done in the last 6 years. And that and various other things may have contributed to his win, but I'm not sure that this specific statement had a very big impact.
Okay. I want to tell you what we're hearing in America, Raoul, and you tell me whether it resonates at all with you. What we were told was Netanyahu really thought he was going to lose. And in the last moments of the election, this is the way it's being portrayed on all American television channels, that basically he tried to scare the Israeli electorate. And he scared them by saying two things. If you don't vote for Likud, if the right does not come out strong in these elections, you're going to have a liberal-leaning government, and a government that also is going to have a large Arab unity presence in the Knesset, and that the Israeli people are at risk. You are going to be risking something, and that I, Benjamin Netanyahu, are your best hope to stop both the liberal wing of the Israeli parties gain too much control, and I'm your best hope to keep the Arab Israeli parties in check. And what we are told is a large turnout for Likud emerged really on election day. People who had never voted for Likud before, we're told, voted for Netanyahu because they were moved not by a domestic issue, not by the cost of housing in Israel, not between the gap between the rich and the poor, not how much did Kahlon save Israelis on their cell phone bill, but that Netanyahu won this stunning come-from-behind last-minute victory because he basically, to use Ari Shavit's terms, he played fear over hope. Now, I'm not in Israel. Raoul, you're there. I don't know where you were on election day. I don't know who you've spoken to in the last 48 hours. I don't know the extent to which I'm asking you a fair question, you personally. But I'm telling you what we're being told in America, an ocean away. And I want to understand the extent to which, yes, the reports we're getting about why Netanyahu won and how he won, the way he framed the issues, and that basically it was in some way to tap into some of the fears Israelis have, not about domestic issues, that ultimately, won the day for him. To what extent do you feel that this analysis, which we're seeing all over the media, is accurate? To what extent do you feel it's missing the point?
Well, I would have to agree with you that Netanyahu made a number of connections in order to encourage the public to think about the Iranian issue or security issues. He suggested that the Zionist Union were not Zionists, that they had forces within them that did not support the state of Israel, and he tried to connect them to the Arab parties. And then he said that if the Arab parties were to gain power in Israel, that would be a real security threat. So through doing so, he tried to suggest that the Zionist Union were weak on security through their potential or theoretical connection to the Arab parties. And I would have to agree with you that that was a move that he did throughout the campaign to try and taint the Zionist Union as a party that shouldn't be considered Zionist. Throughout the whole campaign, he refused to call them the Zionist Union, the name that they took upon themselves. He only called them the Labour Party. And his strategists said openly that we won't call them the Zionist Union because we don't think that they're Zionists. And that was in order to turn them into a potential security threat. Now, on the day of election, you're right that Benjamin Netanyahu put out a message both on his Facebook and Twitter, and a video message in which he said openly, droves of Arabs are making their way to the polling stations. They're being driven by left-wing activists, and the Likud rule is at threat, so therefore we should go out. Now, this, of course, is while we can expect leaders on election day to suggest that other parties are coming out to come against them, other sides of the political spectrum, and would therefore encourage their voters to go out and vote. The specific mention of the word Arabs and said that Arabs are on the way in droves to election to vote is something that has caused a reasonable amount of controversy here in Israel, with calls of racism against the Arab parties. And of course, this is a statement which is worrying for the Prime Minister, who the day after the election has said specifically that he represents all people in Israel, Jews and non-Jews, to specifically name one ethnic group as a threat to his power coming to vote. That is worrying. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is someone who has touted Israel's democracy around the world, that we are a country where Arabs have the right to vote. And it's somewhat ironic that his worry was that they would fulfill that right to vote here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Raoul, you have a wonderful accent. Where are you from?
I was, in fact, born in New York, but I grew up in the United Kingdom and have been living here in Israel for a number of years.
Okay. Are you then familiar with both the American system of government, the British system of government, and the Israeli system of government? Can I assume that?
That's a correct assumption, yes.
Okay. Then you know, in an American election, a presidential winner may get 50-point-something% of the vote, maybe 51%, maybe 52 or 53. The victory by a president tends to be very narrow in America, but at least there is a victory of more than 50%. In Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party received 25% of the vote, giving them the largest absolute number, 30 seats. But he still only got 25% of the vote. That means 75% of the Israeli people voted for some other party. Now, some of those other parties are certainly right-wing, maybe even more right-wing than Likud. So it's not fair to say that he only represents 25% of the Israeli electorate. But he doesn't seem to represent more than 50% of the Israeli electorate. As you describe some of the problems that are now, to use your word, there is controversy now in the state of Israel. And this is what we're trying to understand. By the way, I've said, you should know this personally, as an American Jew, I'm very taken by Benjamin Netanyahu, but the reasons that I am taken by him have very little to do with the way in which a prime minister operates in the state of Israel. I see him when he represents Israel on the international scene. I see him on American television. I see him in the, addressing a joint session of Congress. But I'm not living in Israel day to day, and I'm not privy to nor close to the issues that concern you as an Israeli and the Israeli people. At the same time, I'm very taken by the guy. He has stature, he has a certain gravitas, he's very articulate. But I'm still seeing what you're talking about, the controversy. And one of the things that I'm trying to really locate for the viewer of JBS, and what we're trying to do is give our viewers an insight into the Israeli picture. I want Israelis to speak in their own voice. I don't want us to hear, from CNN and MSNBC or even Fox. I want to hear you, an Israeli, give us a sense of what it's really like. And one of the things that I'm looking for is the extent to which Benjamin Netanyahu right now is riding a crest of popularity. There's a honeymoon period for him in Israel. Or in fact, 48 hours after this election, are the issues that he has raised. Is it a racist comment to talk about the Arab-Israeli vote? You say Israelis just don't care about the two-state solution. It's a big deal here in America. It's a big deal in the Obama administration that the prime minister is walking away from the two-state solution. So I'm trying to get from you a sense of how the Israeli people now are experiencing the aftermath, the results of the election. And I'm not looking for an anti-Bibi statement. I'm not looking for a pro-Bibi statement. I'm looking for you to give us a sense that, Raoul, you're the only window we have right now into what's going on the Israeli street, whether it's Jerusalem or whether it's Tel Aviv or whether it's Haifa or whether it's Rananah, wherever it is. And so I come back to that kind of question again. I want you to just sort of, riff for me on what you think the Israeli electorate, what the people now in the street are feeling and thinking 2 days out from this election.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a long election campaign and a divisive election campaign. As I said, us versus them was the campaign slogan of both parties. And I think that one feeling that many Israelis are feeling after this election is just a sigh of relief that it's over, that all this, every day, every week, there's been a scandal, there's been headlines in the newspapers about the election. It's filled our newscasts constantly. I think there is a certain sense of relief that it's over and that we can start to get back to normal politics and normal lives and normal news without focusing only on the election. The results coming as they did, with the exit polls showing a very close race, and then overnight we saw this dramatic lead with the real results coming through. I think the sort of shock of those results, not necessarily people for or against, but the shock that there was this very strong win in the end sort of has taken people aback. And there is this honeymoon period, but I think it's even we're before the honeymoon period. It's people are just trying to getting to grips with the fact that this is what's happened. It wasn't what we expected necessarily. Even people that were very pro-Likud and were sure they were going to win didn't predict this specific result. And I think so. For these few days, there is less of a talk there's less of a feeling of a tension between different sides, and more of sort of taking a step back after the elections, which did create a lot of tension between these two sides. Now, in the next few days, on Sunday, the president has invited the leaders of the parties to start consultations on the formation of the next government. And from then, we will start to see this sort of honeymoon period or this shock fade as people start to see the potential formation of the next government, which seems like it will be what's been described as a reasonably narrow right-wing government with only the nationalistic partners in the government. In the past, Likud has always taken on some partners from the center or from the left, and this time it looks unlikely that that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And as that happens, there will be more criticism and more debates on both sides of the political spectrum. But at the moment, I do think that there is, like I said, a sense of, okay, it's done. We've finished that period.
Very interesting.
Let's not forget this election has taken place just 2 years after the last election.
Yes, yes.
And although we saw a rise in voter participation, there was a real sense throughout this campaign of enough already. People didn't want to be involved in this so much. It's just been 2 years. We've had the government broke up for reasons that can't be defined. No one knows exactly why they broke up. Disagreements, petty or not, between the parties, and the election campaign is over. But as I said, in a few days, I think that those intense discussions within the Israeli public will start again.
Very interesting. Raoul, there's another issue I'm having a hard time pinning down. Maybe you can help me. On the one hand, there are people in the American media, on television, who are saying day after day after day that President Obama willfully used money through the State Department to support anti-Netanyahu candidates in a conscious and concerted effort by Mr. Obama to defeat Mr. Netanyahu. And Dan Senor, author of Startup Nation and a passionate supporter of Israel, is appearing virtually every night on Fox News with Sean Hannity, saying that the Obama administration engaged in wholly inappropriate attempts to bring down a foreign government, the Netanyahu government. On the other hand, Raoul, while everyone believes President Obama was hoping Mr. Netanyahu would lose, I've been told by very credible Israeli journalists that there is not a single shred of evidence that the Obama administration was actively engaged, not directly, not indirectly through the State Department, of financially supporting groups working to defeat the Prime Minister. And that while wealthy American Jews were supporting Israeli candidates on the left and on the right, it would have been ludicrous for the Obama administration to have thought that any money it gave to groups trying to unseat Mr. Netanyahu would have any real impact on the outcome of these elections. So, Raoul, I'm hoping you can help us clear up this issue. As far as you know, is there any evidence that the Obama administration, directly or indirectly, gave money to groups working to defeat Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, Mark, I'll tell you where that rumor or where that story comes from, and then you can decide if it's strong or weak.
Okay.
What happened is there's an organization called V15, Victory 15, which was a non-profit organization set up in this election to change the government. They said they didn't support one party, but it was obvious that they supported parties on the left aiming to replace Benjamin Netanyahu, and they were part of the Anyone But Bibi campaign. Now, V15 was funded by and partnered with One Voice, an organization that supports and encourages the creation of the two-state solution here in Israel. And One Voice received a grant from the State Department 2 years ago in order to create a campaign to support Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to engage in peace negotiations.
To support.
Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to engage in peace negotiations. That was the grant that they received. Now, that funding ended in 2014, specifically for One Voice. So this organization, which was founded after that grant money ended, yes, it has a connection to One Voice, who at one point got a grant from the State Department, which obviously is part of the Obama administration. Yes, that's true. But the claim that these candidates were directly funded by Obama is a little bit far-fetched. Yes, there's been foreign money involved in this election, which is worrying. And that money has come on both sides. Benjamin Netanyahu's very close associate, Sheldon Edelson, funds a newspaper, a free newspaper here in Israel, Yisrael Hayom, the Daily Israel, which is considered very, very pro-Benjamin Netanyahu. It very rarely has any commentary or articles critical of Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's funded directly by Sheldon Edelson. And on the other side, there have been a number of wealthy individuals from around the world, in the United States particularly, funding the V15 organization. But the claim that Barack Obama and the US administration directly funded left-wing candidates is, I have to say, a little bit far-fetched, as I've explained through that chain of how that money came to the V15 organization.
That was very helpful, Raoul. And again, but if the president did get money to any political candidate, it would be inappropriate and it would be upsetting. But my sense is, again, every responsible journalist I've talked to says it just isn't true, as you have basically said it. And it really is very annoying to see on American television. Yeah?
I'll add 2 points.
Please.
If I may. The first is that Jeremy Bird, from 202 Strategies, is was one of the field managers of Barack Obama's field operation in 2008 and 2012. And he came to Israel to, funded by One Voice, to help this campaign. But again, to suggest that is a direct funding by the Barack Obama administration is a little bit far-fetched. And the Likud put in a complaint against the V15 for funding from foreign sources to the Central Elections Committee in Israel, and that complaint was rejected. Not only was that complaint rejected, the Likud was fined for putting out these rumors or this information that the campaign was funded by foreign organizations. So the Central Elections Committee in Israel rejected those claims.
Fascinating. By the way, the gentleman you referred to is now working for the Hillary Clinton campaign. But it's a very helpful explanation. It's been wonderful talking to you, Raoul. I hope you'll let us call you again, maybe in a week or so, as we watch the development. It's going to take a while for a coalition government to be put together. But there are times in which we would love your input, again, to give us a perspective we don't normally get on American television or anywhere here. And I'm very, very grateful. Thank you very much, Raoul.
Thank you, Mark.
Be well. Raoul Wootliff, the political correspondent of the Voice of Israel in Jerusalem. We hope to be doing a lot with Voice of Israel here on JBS. And by the way, it's important that you hear, again, I cannot find a responsible Israeli journalist who says that the Sean Hannity, Fox News, Dan Senor campaign, also joined by Dory Gold. These are people I really have enormous regard for, but I have seen no evidence whatsoever that the Obama administration was actively working, financially or otherwise, to unseat Prime Minister Netanyahu. That's our program for today. My thanks to Sloan Copeland and Serge Goldberg and our producer for this edition of Election Israel 2015, Ron Jacobsohn. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.